What if I told you the moon might not be what you think it is? Not a natural satellite, not a random chunk of rock orbiting Earth, but something else entirely. Something placed, something engineered. Because the deeper you look into the moon, the less it behaves like a normal object, and the more it starts to feel like a perfectly constructed mystery. So let me ask you this. Why is the one object closest to us the one we understand the least? We've been told the moon has always been there, a silent companion in the night sky. But here's the problem. Science can't still fully explain how it got there. That's not speculation, that's fact. And there are multiple theories. The capture theory. The moon just wandered into Earth's orbit. Yeah, it just walked there. Nah, I don't believe it. The accretion theory. The Earth and the moon formed together. Possibly. And there's also the fission theory, that the moon broke off from the Earth. Doubt it. And then there's the giant impact theory, something the size of Mars slammed into Earth. Sounds solid until you realize that none of them fully work. Each theory explains something, but fails to explain everything. And when multiple explanations all fall short, you're left with an uncomfortable question. What if we're missing something bigger? Now here's where things start getting strange, because when scientists actually studied moon rocks, they expected answers. Instead, they got more questions. Some people even said they were just petrified wood. On Earth, geology is quite simple. The deeper you go, the older the rocks are. But on the moon, it is backwards. The surface soil is actually older than the rocks beneath it. And let that sink in. That's like digging into the ground and finding newer layers underneath older ones. Doesn't make any sense. The only time we see this on Earth is when something has been disturbed, moved, or engineered. And that's just the beginning, because the moon doesn't behave like a normal planet either. Typical planets have dense cores, lighter outer layers. The moon, it appears to have the opposite. But that's to be expected with our moon, right? Its internal structure doesn't even follow the rules. Its density is far lower than it should be. In fact, the moon is about 25% the size of Earth, but only 1% as dense. So what does that suggest? Well, one possibility is simple. There's less inside the moon than there should be. Now here's where things go from strange to almost unbelievable. In the 1960s and 70s, NASA did something very deliberate. They crashed objects into the moon on purpose. Why would they do that? Well, to measure how the moon reacts. And what happened next shocked them. The moon didn't just absorb the impact, it didn't dampen the vibrations like Earth does. Instead, the moon rang like a bell. And not for seconds, not for minutes, for over an hour. And then later, when they did it again, for over 3 hours. Now let me ask you something. When you hit a solid rock, does it ring or does it just make a thud? Because on Earth, vibrations fade quickly. Dense material absorbs energy. But on the moon, vibrations traveled faster the deeper they went, which suggests the inside is less dense and possibly hollow or filled with large cavities. Now pause for a second, because this is where skepticism kicks in, and it should. You're probably thinking, okay, that's weird, but it's not proof. And you'd be right. None of this is proof, but it's something else, a pattern. And the pattern keeps growing. The moon has no significant magnetic field, yet its rocks are magnetized. Craters that are roughly the same depth, no matter how wide. Metals like titanium and zirconium in unusual abundance. And these are materials that just happen to be extremely strong, highly resistant, and perfect for reinforcing structures. Almost like there's something beneath the surface, something preventing impacts from going deeper. And then there's this, the moon's orbit. Out of everything we've observed in space, the moon's orbit is nearly perfect and almost perfectly circular. That alone is extremely rare, but here's the real coincidence. The moon is 400 times smaller than the sun and 400 times closer to Earth, which is why they appear to be the exact same size in the sky, allowing for perfect solar eclipses. Coincidence? Maybe it's a coincidence, but how many coincidences does it take before you start asking different questions? Now, let's take a step even further, because some scientists have said something that sounds almost absurd at first, that it may be easier to explain the non-existence of the moon than its existence. Think about that. It's easier to imagine a world without the moon than to fully explain how it got here. So if the standard explanations don't fully work, what's left? Well, there is one theory, just one, that attempts to explain everything at once. And it says, the moon is not natural, it's hollow, and it was placed here. Now, before you roll your eyes, let's follow the logic. If the moon were hollow, it would explain the low density, it would explain the seismic ringing, and it would explain structural anomalies. If it were artificial, it could explain the unusual materials, the uniform crater depths, the reversed geological layers. And if it were placed here, meaning placed in orbit, that opens a door most people aren't ready to walk through, because now you're asking who built it and why. Some ancient cultures actually have stories of a time before the moon existed. Others speak of the moon arriving and changing the Earth forever. Myths or misunderstood memories? We don't know for sure. But what we do know is this: the moon stabilizes Earth, and without the moon, our axis would wobble, seasons would be chaotic, tides would collapse, and life as we know it might not exist. So here's the thought. What if the moon isn't just there? What if it's maintaining something? Now, let's bring it back to reality, because science does push back on all of this. NASA says the moon isn't hollow. The ringing can be explained by dry rock. The anomalies have natural explanations. And to be fair, some of those explanations make sense. But here's the issue. Even with those explanations, not everything gets resolved. And that leaves us in a very strange place, because this isn't about believing wild theories. It's about recognizing something simpler. We don't fully understand the moon, and maybe that's the most important part of this entire conversation, because the moon is always there. It's always watching, and it's always taken for granted. But what if the most familiar object in our sky is also the most misunderstood? What if we've been looking at it our entire lives and never really seeing it? And what if, just what if, the reason we haven't gone back to the moon in a meaningful way, and I don't mean orbiting around it like Artemis 2, isn't because we can't, but because we found something we weren't supposed to? That's not a conclusion, that's a question, and maybe that's where this ends. Not with answers, but with curiosity. Because whether the moon is natural, artificial, or something in between, one thing is undeniable: it is still a mystery. So the next time you look up at the night sky, don't just see the moon, ask yourself, what am I really looking at? If you enjoyed this video, please help support me on Patreon, the link is below. Give me a like, and if you want to see the next video, I would definitely stay subscribed, because the mysteries, well, they just get deeper. See you in the next one.
Aradevaso Lo Shavi. Not real, not time, not here. Sa novela. No form, no name, same, not same. Fall through, still move.